Okay, I couldn't resist it. I thought I'd have a look at something else on Miles Johnston's channel. This is Eamonn Ansbro, and there's a list of his qualifications along here. There's no physics stuff in there. PhD ABD. That means he doesn't have a PhD. He thinks he should have a PhD, but he doesn't have one. And in academic circles, PhD ABD is frowned on. If someone applied for a job and they put PhD ABD in their list of achievements, they would be most likely rejected as a wannabe. Okay, so that's the first thing. If we move on to he's talking about building a machine for talking to aliens, extraterrestrial civilizations. Yeah. This one's not as this isn't funny, you know. The last one I was falling about laughing, but this is just plain rubbish. It's not even funny. So let's go to 4215. What have we got there? What have we got at 4215? I think this is where he refers to telepathy. So look at this. Sorry about this. I should have actually. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll pause it. I'll pause it next time. There's a few more clips, but I'll pause in between, I think. Okay, so we go to there. And
recent years is the communications, because we actually carried out experiments outside the normal framework of science.
Sorry,
using experiential methods in the communication.
Yeah, sorry, that is a bit funny. Using methods outside of normal physics and the experiential, that means, you know, consciousness, reaching out with your mind. In other words, unprovable nonsense. Imagination, people that want to believe they're doing that, you could probably convince that they were actually doing it, but there's nothing to it.
So, looking at all the literature, I could see that consciousness is the key factor in this, and so we've actually.
Yeah, as soon as somebody says consciousness is the key factor, they're using consciousness to do this, they're using consciousness to do that. Put a line through it. It's absolute rubbish, absolute nonsense.
We did tests in this area, and we've actually did have some success, very similar to the CE5 initiative, Dr. Stephen Greer. But
yeah, and Greer has been making a lot of money out of this for a long time, and he's able to convince some gullible fools that he can vector ET craft with his consciousness. Unfortunately, it's all rubbish. I don't think telepathy has ever been successfully demonstrated. I didn't let it run because it's just nonsense, but that previous clip went on to, this is all one video by the way, to show, you know, a cartoon basically of telepathy, you know, people talking to each other with their minds. As far as I know, this has never been successfully demonstrated. If that could be successfully demonstrated, I think it'd be on 60 Minutes, it'd be on Horizon, it'd be on the Discovery Channel, and people would be making a lot of money out of being able to prove that ability. But whenever they've tried to prove that it can be done, to my recollection, every single time it falls flat. I would certainly not expect that to be possible. And if anyone out there can find a link showing, you know, I don't mean one of these cartoon things, you know, one of these Mickey Mouse things like this. You know, if there's any scientific proof, any kind of test that was done under scientific conditions at a university or something like that, and you got a link to that, I'd be interested in having a look at it. But I'd put a line through telepathy, I'd put a line through communicating with ET with your consciousness. That's just garbage. Now this is quite interesting. This here is his device. He's made a device. Now this device won't work on its own. to communicate with aliens. You know, if you can turn a two-way radio on, and you can have a chat with somebody. But this particular device, it requires some sort of mental connection to it. You need to be consciously, you need to connect to the device with your conscience in order for it to work. In other words, you need to imagine you're talking to ET. Now, here's the device.
And this is the, sorry, this is the antennae we use. And
now this is straight out of, now this is obviously, this is just rubbish to fool the gullible, the non-technical. These are the antennas he's using. You know, there's a coil here, coil there, coils all around here, more coils around the top there, and you know, this is just a codged together a bit of rubbish, really, just to try and suck in the gullible. Probably suck in some investment money, possibly. But what it isn't is an antenna for talking to ET. Now, actually, come to think of it, Miles has told us he's a broadcast engineer. Now, broadcast engineer covers a fairly large area. Broadcast engineer can be a knob twiddler in a studio. Broadcast engineer can be someone that goes, installs, tests, and commissions transmitters and antenna systems and repairs transmitters and fault finds on broadcasting systems. Now, if Miles is the latter, he should know that this is garbage.
They're omnidirectional. In other words, it's not like in SETI where you have directed images, like a radio dish which is directly imaging, say, to that star over there. In this case here, we're covering the whole sky. And the chances of success, I think, are going to be very high based on this and based on the statistics of these more advanced ETI civilizations out there. And then we're using the co-creative science as part of the framework in order to make the breakthrough in this area. Oops.
The co-creative science, of course, being the consciousness part of it, the imagination part of it.
Okay, so on Earth here, we have the QSC, the Quantum Superluminal Communications, on Earth here. So we're dealing with
yeah, let's throw in some terminology that might get a few bucks in.
Trying to eavesdrop, maybe, from say to another planet out there somewhere. We don't know what planet it may be, and it's instantaneous communications within that space-time there. And by changing the frequency, we can actually go into the multiverse.
By changing the frequency. So his instantaneous waves have a frequency aspect to them.
Using the QSC system as well. So we actually got a huge area to cover. Like, the potential is very high actually for detection based on this method. So talking about resonance, it's important that the human being resonate with the instrumentation that's there.
Yeah, this is more sort of new age garbage. You know, the operator has to resonate with the equipment. This is the sort of rubbish you hear from the free energy spruikers. And then they tend to use words like resonance and phase. You know, they'll get a few technical words so that it sounds good, but it's just drivel to impress the non-technical and the gullible.
This instant communication, whoever's out there may be using. I suspect they're using this system. Obviously, different technology, but I think actually I'm optimistic we'll actually make a breakthrough in this area. So who we might pick up, I don't know. Could be other spacecraft, it could be space stations around a planet, it could be on their planet, and there'll be thousands of them out there. Thousands of planets, thousands of ETI civilizations out there. So we may be able to eavesdrop or we might actually end up with a two-way signal. In other words, they've picked up us, rather like the remote viewers that are able.
Yeah, as soon as somebody talks about remote viewing, forget it. Remote viewing it doesn't exist. It's just rubbish, absolute rubbish.
To go into ET spacecraft, and then the occupants of the spacecraft are aware of the remote viewer being there, although they may not have permission to be in their cabin area, you could say. This has been done. In this case, I think...
This has been done? Really? I wonder if you could prove that to us, Mr. Ansbro.
We might be doing the same thing, that they might get an astonishment that a human being actually is in communications with them. And then we have to anticipate the response to that. And the response is you could say on a telepathic basis, but we're going through a machine where it'll provide the data. But we've created a wide framework of responses to this, and also...
Now, what does that looking up and to the right indicate?
Language interpretation. So there's two key things here. There's the scientific and the experiential. It's bringing the two disciplines together. So you have your contemporary scientists, which is all mechanistic due to the whole philosophical area for the last couple of thousand years. And then you've got the co-creative scientists, which is taking the mechanistic.
Yeah, this is just rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Where's the bit where he talks about the waves, the scalar waves?
You need a definition for this, a direction and...
Okay, now here we have Mr. Ansbro telling us about his scalar waves that he uses to communicate instantaneously across the galaxy.
So typically what we use is in the electromagnetic spectrum is this waveform.
So he's using a waveform within the electromagnetic spectrum. Sounds an awful lot like an electromagnetic wave to me.
That's here. But there's also another form, which is what's called a longitudinal wave, or scalar wave. And it was actually Nikola Tesla that discovered all this. And we're...
Yeah. I've never seen a demonstration of scalar waves that are non-electromagnetic in nature.
Basically using Tesla technology.
Yeah, we're talking about turn of the century rubbish.
To some degree. So, so you have your waveform that you use for your radio, television, and so forth. If you were to communicate to somebody, say in Australia, it'd be about a third of a second within the electromagnetic spectrum. But if you're using this unusual type of waveform here, it's called a scalar wave. It's a compression of waves. So you end up actually with...
That looks a lot like noise to me.
With no time at all. In other words, that third of a second becomes zero. It's instantaneous. So we call it longitudinal waves. It's actually still within the wave within the electromagnetic spectrum, but the wave now has turned 90 degrees. So
the wave is within the electromagnetic spectrum, but it's turned through 90 degrees. Now, absolute rubbish, absolute garbage. Now, Miles, if he's a broadcast engineer that knows anything about radio waves and transmitters, would know this is absolute garbage. A radio wave, an electromagnetic wave, can be vertical, can be horizontal, can be anywhere in between, can be rotational. It's like an electromagnetic wave turned through 90 degrees. Absolute rubbish.
There's this compression wave, and I'll be going into that in a little bit more detail.
He doesn't, of course.
Some of this had been experimented on back in 1989.
Yeah, okay. Well, he goes on and on to say that it becomes more a conscious-based type of communication system. In other words, it's a load of rubbish. Now, I think we come to the crux of the matter at... where was it? 1 hour. Let's just fast forward to a 1 hour. Let's see what we get there. Where are we? This is just too ridiculous to do too much with this. But okay, let's restart it there and see what we get.
And the first guy that came up with it on the lab bench was Austin McKinney. And there has been a certain amount of papers dealing with superluminal communication technology, well, mainly on the lab bench, proving that there is something in this. So just going into the scope of ETI communications, just reviewing this, is that SETI indeed is using the electromagnetic spectrum in the microwave radio.
Yeah, that's true.
And obviously looking for ETI within our space-time, that is. So it's a physical reality. So in our physical reality, as we are...
Well, that's right. I mean, we're not going to come across ET if they're not within our physical reality.
Now, we have all these other dimensions. If you go into another reality, it would also have its dimensions as well. So, so SETI outside the electromagnetic spectrum, you can still use...
Now this is now he's saying SETI outside of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now remember that he said that his scalar waves are within the electromagnetic spectrum.
This quantum superluminal communications, or FTL communications, in our physical reality, but also you can use it in the multiverse as well. So you can go into another universe, so to speak, and I'll go into that later.
And he doesn't.
So the multiverse has been accepted theoretically. It's just a picture to give you some idea of what it might look like. Yeah, Scientific American, there's quite a few published papers showing that the multiverse is agreed on. It is there. Even CERN is dealing with the multiverse as well. So, Catherine Ansbro's talk this morning, we've applied those methods, which we call a co-creative science. So in other words, you have that partnership with nature intelligence, like a spinning top. You've got to understand how the spinning top operates. There's a whole energy in the spinning top. You have to understand all the dynamics behind it. And then you get to the point where you can actually tip it. And this is what we're trying to do. So by tipping it, then we hopefully get confirmation.
No, he's tipping it, all right. Piles of it.
By the right authorities that we've got the first contact. So you go through, this is the only agency that specialises in this. The United Nations, by the way, doesn't deal with this area at all. They do have a space law commission, I think it is, but they've been pretty lazy about this whole area because they don't expect any contact. Sorry? Oh, sorry. They don't expect any contact. Anyway, there's what's called the SETI Permanent Committee of the International Astronautical Federation. It's made up of a whole team. I know some of these guys already. They're partly in our team as well. The research and all the experimental stuff that we've been doing, they don't understand what we're doing. That's fine. What they're interested in is first contact. They couldn't care less how it's done. All right, so although I've been criticised by some key people about, well, you're breaking the laws of physics, and I said, yeah, but we've developed the instrumentation. We know how to do it now. So you can save your 100 million,
So mainstream scientists are saying he's talking out of his backside, it's all rubbish, and he's saying, well, you can see it for 100 million. You can see it for 100 million. I think this is what it's all about, really, isn't it? Getting some cash in for a couple of bits of PVC pipe with some coils wound on them. But you can't see it working for 100 million. You can't see contact with an ET civilization for 100 million. But you can go to Ireland and you can have a look in his backyard and you can see two bits of PVC pipe stuck on a bit of MDF board with coils wound around them. How stupid does this bloke think people are? So what's that 101? Let's just go back and hear that again. To there.
Partly in our team as well. The research and all the experimental stuff that we've been doing, they don't understand what we're doing, that's fine. What they're interested in is first contact. They couldn't care less how it's done. Right? So, although I've been criticised by some key people about, well, you're breaking the laws of physics, and I said, yeah, but we developed the instrumentation. We know how to do it now.
Really? Demonstration would be good, wouldn't it? Now, you know, a demonstration of that talking to an ET civilization would be worth money, granted. Never happened, because this is just a lot of crap designed to entertain or suck in the gullible, and probably suck in some cash from the gullible, I suspect.
So you can say for 100 million, you know?
You can see it for 100 million, you know? Yeah. Next caller, please. And who do we come across again? This is the end of the same video. Our old mate Peter Paget, the fantasist and fraudster.
Going straight on with my presentation, I'm Peter, and I'd like to thank my colleague who's been extraordinarily brave. I think he needs a round of applause.
Yeah, nuts supporting nuts. Now we're at the end of this ludicrous presentation, and we have our old mate Ben Emlyn-Jones from the Hapanwo TV channel, getting up to ask a question.
Oh, Eamonn, I was just curious. What has been the attitude of your academic peers to your little side interest?
Good question, actually, Ben. Good question, mate. Now, Ben is not an engineer. He's not a technical guy. He was a hospital porter. I don't know what he does these days, but he has no real understanding of you know, radio waves and what the guy's actually talking about. So, bearing in mind that you know, he doesn't have a technical background, that's probably the best question he can ask.
One flavour of this back in 2001 is that I presented the astronautical theory, which showing that we actually have the evidence for extraterrestrial intelligent spaceships going around the Earth. Now, this is treated as a hypothesis, okay? Because you have to be very careful when you're in this community. So I presented all this, and I could see actually there's about 500 scientists, some of the well-known figures. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that quite a few of them went white, and then
some fell about laughing. I would think there was quite likely puddles of urine below some chairs.
They thought actually I was ostracised from the dinner.
What a surprise! Who would have picked that?
That evening, and the discussion was among quite a lot of people was that I had perpetrated a hoax on the community, and secondly that 50% thought I perpetrated a hoax, and
50% thought he's as nutty as a fruitcake.
Thought there's something in this.
No, I don't think so. All right, well, I think that's enough of Mr. Ansbro and his device for communicating with aliens. Put a line through this guy. Absolute rubbish. Thanks for watching. I'll, depending on how much time I've got on my hands, if I've got too much time on my hands, I might make a few more of these and take a look at some of these other ludicrous claims that you see on these conspiracy theory channels.